And I guess that's about it for me on this one.
Okay. Let me ask a couple of questions of the panelists, and then we can get some questions from the audience, if the audience has questions. I want to direct my first question to Nate. Nate, you said a couple of things in your presentation. You said, first of all, anarchists don't believe in final answers, and that if authority is not justified, it should be torn apart. The questions that I have are some of you talked a little bit about there's this transition period and where are we going to go, but I didn't hear any solutions to where we're going to go when we tear down the institutions that we have right now. And if we don't believe in final answers, what direction are we going in? And if there's no one to make any decisions, who's going to lead us?
As far as not believing in final answers, what it means is that you don't ever accept the constraints of like Jerry was talking about. You don't ever say, okay, this is it. We've got there. This is what it is. This is the way it'll always be. We're there. You constantly always look, even in an anarchist society, there'll be dissidents. And it will have to be addressed. And there will be people who would say, maybe we arrange things and we come up with a great system like I was talking about with federations and assemblies and anarcho-syndicalist trade unions. Maybe once it starts, we find that, that's not happening. This isn't as free as we'd envisioned it at first. Well, then it's up to us to reimagine and rebuild and reconstruct those notions. As far as the how are we going to get there, anarchists believe in what's called prefigurative politics. It means that in organizations, the anarchists organize themselves, not necessarily all organizations anarchists are in. They're going to build those organizations to look like the society they want it to look like tomorrow. In other words, they're going to build these societies based on mutual aid, voluntary association, and horizontalism, decentralization, etc. It means that when we look at things like the Northeastern Anarcho-Communist Federation or the International Workers of the World or various, the Anarchist Black Cross Federation, etc., when we look at the organizational structures of these groups, this is how we want society to look. When it comes to how society is going to be run, who's going to lead us, I don't even know what that means. I mean, in all honesty, when it comes to leading someone, when I find that the term can be very hollow because all the people who are denoted as leaders, almost all the people who are denoted as leaders today, congressmen, senators, presidents, parliamentarians, prime ministers, etc., they don't really do much leading per se. They say a lot of flowery words, but they don't really do much of anything. Like I said, they're all like a bunch of pro wrestlers. I mean, they come with these big interviews and a bunch of music plays and it's very flashy. But at the end, they only cater to those constituents who have the capital and the finance to make sure that they pay attention to their needs. So when it comes down to that, who will lead us? We're going to lead ourselves. If we find that somebody has to be in charge of a project, if somebody has to be in charge of this, if somebody has to make those decisions, there has to be administrative functions undertaken by people consistently. You will elect those people. You will put, via direct democracy, you will put various limitations on them. You will strictly define what they can and cannot do. If they start to go beyond those limitations, they're always subject to instant recall. That's one of the things we don't have now as well, is that people aren't subject to instant recall. Does that kind of sum up what you were asking about?
It does, thank you. I wanted to know, as somebody who believes or ascribes to the tenets of both Christianity and anarchism, the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, that is, no double standards. Do you believe that is a tenet of both anarchism and Christianity? And if so, why?
It's definitely a tenet of both. And the reason that it has to be both is Christ teaches us that we are all equals, that we all have a say, that through the life and teaching of Christ, and having studied the Old and the New Testament, the Old Testament having to do mainly with this distant God that was very judgmental and everything, I see that as parallel to the corporate America that is here today. And I'm kind of lost in the answer to your question, so please forgive me.
It's definitely a principle of anarchism in and of itself, universality, the idea that you don't do to people what you don't want done to you, because to do so would be to oppress. To oppress would be to be an authority, which would be what we're trying to get away from altogether. So it's definitely a principle of anarchism.
And Jared, I want to put the last question to you. I want to talk to you a little bit about the media. Do you feel comfortable talking a little bit about the media?
Yeah.
What is it about the media today? Do you think it makes it hard for real content to get disseminated to the populace?
Well, I think a main reason why is because so much of what the media, the mass media in general, I mean, that's basically what I'm going to be talking about here tonight. It focuses so much on entertainment and advertising that it leaves so little room for any kind of discourse on policies, anything of public concern a lot of the time. I mean, yeah, basically what it's there to do is train consumers to buy products from these companies, like you were saying, the elite rich people that control the policies of the media and government in general. But yeah, basically it's to sell audiences to advertisers, like you were saying.
So does anybody have any questions that they would like to ask?
All right. Well, the criterion of having a authority is that it be justified. Can you think of any historical examples or any microcosm kind of examples where there's knowledge differences amongst people that a justified authority or justified hierarchy exists? Like, say, a doctor should be able to tell you like what your problems are. And so you should believe what they say. But, a Christian scientist could say, no, I don't believe in viruses or something. And should, or I don't know if it's too moral or too philosophical a question, should we have the right, or should we venture into ways to coerce people for their own good? If there is such a knowledge difference or such an ideological difference, just play with the idea of what is the closest approximation we can find to a justified authority or justified hierarchy.
Sure. When it comes to justifiable hierarchy, I'm not seeing it. One of the best examples I can think of is like plumbing. Like you have a plumber come over, you can't fix your own drain. I mean, those things are complicated. The plumber has a lot of knowledge on this. He is an authority on plumbing. If he says, listen, you probably ought to not shove butter knives down the drain again. It'll get clogged up. You probably ought to listen to him about it. He knows something about it, okay? It's his job. I mean, that's what he does. If you can prove that, you put X, not necessarily, I don't put a certain number on it, but if you can prove that you've engaged in a certain amount of processes that would lead you to believe that you're, an expert, maybe that's the better word as opposed to authority, if you were an expert on everything from, like G.I. Joe figures, the little 3 3/4 figures to like dinosaurs, then you would have